What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today I have a wish list for all of you. I am diving into the things from D&D editions past that I would love to see integrated into one D&D playtest material. As we continue to get it month over month, we've gotten the character origins, and we can look forward to the other ones coming out. Obviously, if you're watching this in the future and other playtest material has already come out, then let me know in the comments down below how much they acquiesce to my demands. So these are things from previous editions of D&D that I want to see. 10 things from previous editions of D&D, and then 2 things that I hope they can manage to avoid. So first off is one not really tied to a specific edition. I feel like its heyday was the AD&D 3rd edition era. But I would love to see a return to Dungeon and Dragon magazines. I feel like with the acquisition of D&D Beyond and the elevation of its status and them going for a true digital experience, I would love for them to bring that back as a D&D Beyond feature. I know we've had the Dragon Plus magazine that has come out, but it lacks some of the teeth that I feel like the old Dungeon magazines had in terms of what it provided for Dungeon Masters. And same with Dragon magazine. I have a bunch of old copies, and I'll still flip through them to find really cool adventure ideas and modular encounters and things like that. And so I would love to see a reinvestment into that platform. And I think it could work really well as a continuation of this 1D&D monthly playtest material, where once 2024 hits, they launch the new version of 1D&D. They launch the new Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, and Dungeon Master's Guide. I would love to see them just continue that monthly cadence, but with a Dragon/Dungeon magazine on D&D Beyond. It could be PDF form like a true print magazine, or it could just be material for D&D Beyond that is in kind of a contained page. So anyway, that's number 1 for me, is I would love to see that. And it plays into number 2 from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons era, specifically in their adventure design, in both the published adventures and in Dungeon Magazine. Would love to see a return to modular adventure/encounter design. Since 3rd edition and all the way forward to now, any published adventures feel very narrative and story rich, which I'm not complaining about. Do not get me wrong. But it makes adventures and encounters that are intrinsically tied to the story that is being told within that book, without some work on the DM's part to file off the serial numbers. Whereas if you go back to older adventures, pre-3rd edition, and I did a video Throwback Thursday thing that I looked at the very first adventure published in the very first Dungeon magazine. And what struck me is how story light it was, but intentionally. It was an adventure that provided you with a brief backstory in the form of a paragraph. But then the rest of it was, okay, the adventurers are outside this dark tower. Here's what they see. And that's it. And so that is something that I could take and drop in my world wherever I want. And I have an interesting narrative thread for that specific place in the world. It's not some grand sweeping story. I can construct a grand sweeping story around it. So I would love to see some books in the same vein as Candlekeep Mysteries, Journeys to the Radiant Citadel, except scaled even further back in terms of the connective tissue between everything. And just give us a big book of encounters, a big book of locations, something like that we could just have and be able to flip to, of like, okay, here are 3 cave adventures. And so party comes across a cave, boom, 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 flip to it. There we go. Love to see that return for a book or 2, or as part of the new Dungeon magazine on D&D Beyond, if they do that as well. Okay, the third one, we are into the 3rd/3.5 era. First and foremost, and this one is contingent on something later on the list. I don't want this and the other thing, but I definitely like these. Prestige classes. I loved prestige classes in 3.5 and Pathfinder. I think they are so fun. They give you a goal as you're leveling up your character. You're like, okay, I want to become this thing. Here are the prerequisites. Here are the things that I need. So now I have a philosophy when it comes to leveling up my character, which I can then put a narrative drive under of, okay, I need to have a proficiency in stealth, acrobatics, and sleight of hand. I need proficiency in those three things. And I need to have proficiency in disguise kit. I don't even know what prestige class I'm going for. And let's say that by virtue of my class and background choices and stuff, I have proficiency in all those except for one. Then I can get a feat, get the skilled feat, or another feat that comes out that gives me proficiency. Or if it's just a simple, you need a +6 in all of these things. Well, let's say I have a +6 in my dexterity, but I have a wisdom-based skill that I need bump in. Then I know on my next ability score increase, I need to do a +2 in wisdom to get that up. And then I can develop the narrative underneath that. I love prestige classes. I think they are so fun, and they just give you that sense of progression as a player. So I really love them. Number 4. I would like to see flanking rules recodified and brought back in as not an optional rule, but I want them to be back to the +2 modifier. I think giving full-on advantage is a bit much, and I think that it enables like stuff like sneak attack damage and all these things to happen too easily, especially if you're playing Theater of the Mind. So I would love to see flanking as a codified rule with a simple +2 bonus to attack, because I think that was a good sweet spot for flanking to reside in. And it makes sense if you are surrounding a foe that there should be some tactical advantage to that, in my opinion. And then you could also add different monster qualifiers that prevent things from being flanked, which would be interesting and cool. I know some monsters already have something. No, I don't think monsters do. I think that's a homebrew that I saw, where like something like a beholder can't be flanked because it's got eye stalks, so it can like look every direction at the same time. So you could do stuff like that from a design standpoint, but bringing flanking back would be really cool. Additionally, tumbling from 3.5, where you can, when you would incur an opportunity attack, you can make an acrobatics check to tumble through the space and prevent getting attacked. I know that like the disengage action is something akin to this, but you have to give up your action unless you're a rogue to do that. And I would like to see it just be maybe you use your reaction like that. That's how you use your reaction, is to prevent an opportunity attack from hitting you. But I would like to see some way of mitigating opportunity attacks outside of a full-on action. Now we're into number 5 and into 4th edition territory. Everyone's favorite edition. Minions. Bring back minions. I know that Matt Colville did a Kickstarter for Flea Monsters. I backed it. I've seen some of the material. And a lot of the monster design philosophy that they're doing, I love. It harkens back to 4th edition. So there are going to be some overlap with the things that they're doing, including minions. Minions are such a great way to make the player characters feel powerful, feel in charge, but still be threatened. Because, for those of you that didn't play 4th edition, minions are very easy to kill, but they still scale up in terms of packing a punch. So a level 20 minion is still going to be a threat if not dealt with, but they are easy to deal with, because they only have 1 hit point. However, they don't take damage when they succeed on a saving throw. So if they succeed, they just, even on spells that would normally do half damage, they take no damage because you actually have to hit a minion in order to take them out. So I like minions from a encounter design standpoint. It feels really good to be able to throw handfuls of monsters at your party and let them just go wild with it. I remember playing a monk in 4th edition where I got to like move a crazy long distance as part of an encounter power. But every time I like engaged with a enemy, I could make an attack. And I remember just taking out like 6 minions and just that feeling so cool, in like the visual of my elf monk just literally just kung fuing their way across the battlefield, taking out all of these minions, was such a great feeling. And you can't replicate that right now in 5th edition, at least consistently. So yeah, I want that back, please. The next one is, this is the thing that's contingent with prestige classes, where I don't think we need both, but I would like one or the other. Paragon Paths / Epic Destinies. You could do prestige classes and Epic Destinies because those are separate from each other. But Paragon Paths, once again, for those of you who didn't play 4th edition, were essentially branching points for every class. Every class had a set of Paragon Paths that was a further specialization that you could, once you hit 10th level, go into, and you got to pick which way you wanted to go. And I really liked it because I like it better than something like a subclass, because subclasses you pick really early on, some of them even at first level, and you don't really have a full grasp on what you want to do, both mechanically and narratively a lot of times. Because a lot of DMs will also say, okay, make a 3rd level character so that way you can pick your subclass. And I can like look at everything and think, okay, I'll do this. But it's so much more satisfying to have that decision be informed through play. Through after 10 levels of playing, now my character knows how they want to specialize, what they want to do, who they want to be. And then Epic Destinies were once you hit level 20, because 4th edition went to 30th level. You picked your Epic Destiny, and kind of, this was your path to retirement, as it were. Where is your character going to be at the end of the campaign? Because some of them were like demigod and all this stuff. And so you gained more and more power as you leveled up on this path. And then at the end, you kind of ascended to this final form. And that was a great storytelling device, Epic Destinies. So I feel like you could do Paragon Path or Prestige class, and then Epic Destinies on top of that, where if you want to keep it at 20th level, then I would do Paragon Path at either 5th or 10th level. Probably keep it at 10th level, just because Paragon Path is supposed to be like a big moment where you're like a full-fledged hero. And then Epic Destiny can be something at 15th level. Like the last 5 levels are this Epic Destiny of ascending to this greater than. Or just, have Epic Destinies be an optional rule for 20th to 30th level play. That could also work. So anyway, I like narrative flavor of things that you get to add on later. So that's just me. Next up, monster rolls. So this is similar to the flea monsters design philosophy. They're bringing this back. I would love to see it in all the monsters for D&D. But if you look at 4th edition monster stat blocks, they have a word up there like bruiser, controller, and it let you know as the dungeon master when you were looking at this monster card what role the monster filled within a larger encounter design philosophy. And it just made encounter design easier, that much easier, because I knew, okay, I want to have 3 bruisers, so let me look through, find the bruisers. And if it was like sortable on D&D Beyond, that would make it even more easy. If I could say undead bruisers, undead controllers, and then I could just have the list of the monsters that I want to take. That would be so phenomenally easy as a dungeon master to design encounters that aren't necessarily balanced, but have the flavor that I want. So yeah, monster rolls, bring those back, please. Last one from 4th edition. And this one I think was universally praised. I don't think this is a controversial one. The bloodied condition and effects therein. So the bloodied condition was when you were at less than half your hit points, you were considered bloodied. That was a nice, easy shorthand. In fact, some of my players still use it to this day to let the rest of the table know, hey, I'm bloodied. So the healers know, okay, you're halfway down. I'll keep an eye on you, yada, yada, yada. And then additionally, and the even cooler thing was, from a monster design standpoint, you could do effects on the bloodied condition. When a monster is bloodied for the first time, this thing happens. They go into a rage. The dragon's breath weapon recharges automatically when they're bloodied for the first time. Something like that gives that sense of progression in the combat, but also the escalation of stakes of like, this thing is getting more desperate. This thing is getting more angry. This thing is getting even more intense. And yeah, it's so cool. And it's such an easy, simple thing to have at the table. And you could also do class abilities based off bloody. Barbarians having bloody conditions makes so much sense. So like when you're bloody for the first time, you can enter a rage for free. Like it doesn't count against your rages that you take for the day. That's a really easy one to do. So now from a balance standpoint, I don't like, designers can look into that, but that's just an idea that popped off the top of my head. So the bloody condition and effects based upon the bloody condition. Before we get to number one, I'm going to cover the two things that I hope that they can avoid. The first one, and these were problems in 3.5 specifically. Feat bloat. We're getting leveled feats, which I'm excited for. And I also think that there's some really cool things that you could do with feats. However, if you look at the final state of 3.5 before they sunset that and moved on to 4th edition, there were hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of feats, which was great for a customization standpoint. And I never played 3.5, but I did play Pathfinder, which also suffered in 1st edition from its fair share of feat bloat. And I hit a point where legit, when I leveled up and I saw that I was gaining a feat, I groaned. It's like, I'm going to have to look through everything. And I eventually hit a point where I just had to pick, like, okay, I'm going to be a crit fisher. Like, my character is going to be dedicated to getting critical hits and doing crazy things when they critical hit. So that narrowed down my focus when looking through feats, because there were just so many to look through. So avoid feat bloat. Find a way, like with the leveled feats and obviously going to 4th level feats, 8th level feats, and that kind of thing, just avoid getting too crazy with it while still satisfying the itch that people have to have cool new feats. Because I think right now 5th edition doesn't quite have enough, but 3rd edition / 1st edition Pathfinder had way too many. So find a sweet spot. And another issue with 3rd edition, too many skills. The skills got so granular and specific that it bordered on parody. So I think the skill list that we have now is good. I don't think we need to add any skills. Maybe a couple. Maybe there's a couple out there that we could stand to stick in there. But I think the skill list as 5th edition has it right now is perfect. So keep it. Okay. Number one thing from a previous edition that I want to see them bring into the 1D&D sphere, and this isn't a mechanic. This is, once again, harkening back to our first thing of the Dungeon/Dragon magazine. This is more from a design standpoint of how they're releasing content. From Pathfinder 1st edition, which is a version of D&D, adventure paths with a subscription. The way Paizo does adventure paths and the subscription model is great. And I think with D&D Beyond, you could do a physical digital bundle of adventure path style content that is released monthly, quarterly, however often you want to drop it. But short volumes that lead to a full on adventure, something like Descent into Avernus or Hoard of the Dragon Queen, like these big epic adventure books that we've gotten. Chop them up into 6 pieces and release them over time for a reduced cost. I mean, ultimately it's going to come out to be the same. And then let me sign up for a discounted subscription, a 20% off if I sign up for the subscription and get it as they release on both D&D Beyond and physically. Or I could just do a D&D Beyond only, a digital only subscription for even less money. I think that would be really great. And back when we were playing Pathfinder, I had the Adventure Path subscription, and it was just such an exciting thing to get the next installation of an adventure and sit down and read it and like pour into it and see where the adventure was going to lead next. So it makes adventures exciting for dungeon masters also, because if I'm running the adventure and we hit the end of that book and the next one hasn't come in yet, it's a cliffhanger for everybody at the table. Like the dungeon master doesn't know what's going to happen next. None of the players know what's going to happen next, and we have to wait for our copy to come in. And it's so fun and exciting and an engaging way to play the game. And I think they should absolutely try to modify that model and bring it into Dungeons and Dragons because it is so fun and so cool. Are there any things on your wish list that you want to see Wizards bring into 1D&D through the playtest material or once the actual edition gets published in 2024? Let me know down below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.